One of my cherished possessions that I use every single day in my apartment is my copper kettle. And old copper, often when you find it, the inside is all corroded and it needs to be retinned. So I sent my kettle out to Rhode Island to be retinned, and it came back looking like it was new. And today I'm back here in Rhode Island to share with you this very interesting place behind this nondescript door, East Coast Tinning, where Jim is going to show us how he takes something like this and brings it back to life. I'm here with Jim Hammond, who retins antique copper cookware. Jim, where did you learn how to do this?
This was something that just came out of a little bit of a passion of my own. I found a big stock pot in France on a trip that my wife and I really enjoyed. And she said, I'm not buying it unless you can fix it.
Okay.
And it was gross on the inside. It was green.
Yeah.
There was copper showing. She didn't want to cook in it, but she kind of liked the bones of what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the genesis of this whole thing, was this one stock pot that we found. And she said, you're going to need to fix this if we buy it. So
when was that?
That was about 2006, 2005.
Okay. So
we've been at this about 20 years now.
And there aren't a lot of people doing this, right?
I mean, it's a niche of a niche, right?
Yeah.
The copper cookware that is out there, beautiful pieces from even the mid 1800s right on through to present day. There's gorgeous copper cookware, and all it really needs sometimes is a fresh lining and it's good to go again. So 150-year-old piece.
That's amazing. And this is something that I've wanted to come here and share you with the people that watch my videos, because every time I'm antiquing and I see a beautiful piece of copper cookware, I think, I'm sure a lot of people look at this stuff and there's a big question mark. Can I use this? Is this safe to use? And I know from my own experience of doing what I did with my kettle that all of this stuff is safe to use if it's retinned.
Right.
And I think the confusing thing for a lot of people is when you're looking at it, how do you know? Like, how do you know what level it's at?
Yep. There's kind of two answers to that question. First is it a good piece? Is it a piece that you want to cook in? Is it a piece that is thick? Does it have a maker that is really unique out there? There's obviously, over the course of 150 years, there's lots of different makers, lots of different geographies that were making copper. So first is it a nice heavy piece?
Yep.
Is it a thick copper? A heavier, thicker copper will spread the heat quicker, which is why we use copper. It's the conductivity of the metal gives you a nice, evenly heated cooking surface. So that's why we're using copper. So number one, is it a good, heavy, thick piece? Number two is, does it have a maker that is of interest out there? Does it make it double the value just because it has the maker on it that everyone wants to see? And third, is it in good shape? Are there tears in the copper? Are there holes in the copper? Are there the rivets loose and leaking? So you've got bones of it. Is it a good quality? Number two, is it from an interesting maker? And number three, where is it in its life? Is it need to be recycled into something new, or is it usable?
Yeah. I just realized I brought something in the car to show you, and I left it out there, so I'm just going to run and get it.
Sure.
The car's right outside.
That's no problem.
2 seconds. So, my friend Eve, who I stay with when I visit her in Rhode Island, she's always going to yard sales. And we went through the basement yesterday, and I was just looking at stuff. And I think this is I'm really fascinated to ask you about this, because when I look at most copper cookware that I see at yard sales, I think, this just looks cheap. Like, it doesn't look like anything that excites me. For example, this.
Yep.
Like, I'm not excited by this, but what would you, two things. What would you say when you said about, is it worthwhile? What would you say about this? And then the second thing is, when you look at the tinning on this, is it usable?
Sure. The first of all, the first thing I notice is the rolled top edge.
Yes.
That rolled top edge, as opposed to a piece that has a straight top edge.
Yeah.
The roll usually is there to give it strength, and they're giving it strength because it's so thin.
Oh.
So this one is a lot lighter, even though this one's bigger.
Yeah.
This is thicker and heavier copper. So the first thing I notice is that rolled edge, telling me it's not great quality to begin with. If we look at the maker, I believe this is Portuguese. And number one, it's not super quality. Number two, the maker is not of interest on this particular piece. And so how is the tin lining? The tin at first blush looks pretty good. It's dark. Tin will darken over time, and that's just what it does. The things that I'm noticing here are the green patches. And it's very likely that underneath these green patches here is raw copper. The green is verdigris, and verdigris happens when you have an acid or a salt that is on raw copper, and you'll end up having copper acetate, which is the green.
Yep.
So I believe that the copper is showing through in these places where the green is. That if it's a very small amount, no problem. The rule of thumb is that when you can see an area of copper, total area, it's about the size of a quarter.
Yes.
Then it's time to have it retinned.
Okay.
So if we add up all these little splotches, it's not really the size of a quarter. So I'd say that this piece is probably usable as is. If you want it to be really safe, having it retinned is, you don't know where it came from, you don't know what happened to it previously.
Yeah.
You know that I'm using good tin, pure tin. So something to think about as well.
But then when you mentioned you're looking at these pieces, assessing whether it's worthwhile, here's the thing. It's like you pick this up for $20, but tinning it is an investment, and that might not really be worthwhile for something that's...
Correct. A value of a piece, certainly quality, where is it usable, and what's the maker of it. And to buy something for $20, an average retinning is about $100.
Yep.
So retinned, polished up on the outside, about $100 to restore it and make it usable. Now, is the value of this piece going to be over $120?
Yeah.
And yes, it's going to be a little over $120. But if you find a piece that is just a spectacular piece, the retinning is a minuscule amount of $100 based off a piece that might sell for $700 is, it's a different story.
What do you think about this piece?
This piece is to me, it's jumping off the page as French.
Yes.
I like the style of it. Instead of having the two handles, it's got the single little mini handle here. The maker, I believe, is Deiler in Paris. And that Deiler mark is copper mecca. I mean, it is the place to find copper in the world. And for the past 150 years, this store in Paris has been selling cookware, and everybody knows Deiler.
Yeah, I know it too.
So great piece. Number one, French, nice style. Number two, it's got good thickness. It's a nice weight. Number three, and then it's got a value kicker there with a mark from Deiler. So great piece. This piece doesn't show any greenness on the inside. The tin is in good shape. It's darkened a little bit, but no copper showing through, no greenness. So I'd say this piece could be used right off the vintage store shelf.
That's great to know, because when I look at this, I've always wondered, like, do these little marks and do these lines indicate that it's not usable and it needs to be retinned?
Great question. You somebody who is not completely familiar might look at that and say, this is copper showing through, and it isn't. The darkness is just what tin does. It will turn. Here's another little piece next to us. This to me is in pretty good shape still. The tin is very dark, but it's still tin. And one of the ways that I will ask people to test a pan is to take a small like a Scotch-Brite.
Yes.
The green and yellow Scotch-Brite sponges, that green side is really aggressive, and you don't want to wash it every day because you'll be washing away the with that green side, you'll be washing away the tin, scrubbing it away. But to tell what you've got here with a slight scrub will likely scrub away the higher layer, which is that darkness, and show you bright tin below.
Okay.
Don't want to do it every day,
Yep.
but as a test, yeah, it would be fine. If you scrub one of these and it turns pinky bright pink,
Then
like
it's
the copper,
copper.
it's copper. It's copper showing through. If it turns silvery, you know that you've just scrubbed off a top layer of tin, and it's fine underneath.
So tin is safe to cook in?
Yep, tin. You think of tinned cans.
Yes. Okay.
We're up against the tin was up against the food
Yep.
the entire time
Yep.
that the food was in the can, and in that particular case, the tin is protecting the steel
Yes.
can from the inside. So if you got tomatoes, it's going to corrode steel. So they line the can with tin. Now they line it with plastic, right? But they used to line with tinned cans, and the tin would separate the steel from the food to protect the integrity of the can. This particular in terms of cooking on tin, same sort of thing. Tin is fine with the body as far as cooking is concerned.
Now you have some pans set out here to show us kind of the stages
Sure.
of what happens, because if you find a piece out there that you really love, that's an antique piece or that's something with a maker's mark, and you bring it to Jim or you send it to him, because people can mail things to
Absolutely,
you, right?
yes.
What happens?
We bring it in,
Yes.
and we tag it up with your information. Our number one task, I always say to the team, is not getting people's pans lost.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
number one.
Yeah.
And this is a little saute pan that looks like it got quite overheated. The copper hardly looks like copper anymore, but it's a nice thickness. Doesn't have an obvious maker's mark on it that's jumping out at me. But they sent it in. It's very dark. You can see a couple little blotches here of tin that were melted, and it's rough. It's rough to the touch, and it looks like a little pool. And what happened was the pan got so hot, the tin melted, sloughed down in the middle, and formed these little pools of tin that hardened again. So at the outside, to me, shows that it got way too hot.
Yes.
The inside as well says to me it got way too hot. So this might be the reason why they were sending this one in. So as it arrives to us, we tag it up.
Yep.
This one's going to be retinned and polished. And the next step that we do in the process is removing all of the tin. So we take out all of the material, and we're down to raw copper.
Yep.
There. So the new tin is going to stick very easily to the raw copper that's down there. The tin is not going to stick to something like this that has oils on it, that has been cooked on. The oils are it's going to be like oil and water trying to get the tin to stick onto something like this. So the first step, we remove all of the old material on there. So again, if you have a piece that you're not quite sure what the lining is and I don't want to cook on it,
Yeah.
it's nice to know that the material is removed. Number one. Number two is tinning the piece. And tinning is a pan on the stove getting so hot that the stick of tin will melt like, it looks like mercury. So it is a molten metal that's riding around in a copper vessel. And I'm manipulating that tin by hand with a rag.
Yeah.
And I feel my job is to get it looking, get it on there as thick as possible so it'll last a long time without making it look hugely sloppy, right? So manipulating that around, basically painting the inside of that with molten tin, which sticks very nicely, getting the excess out, making it look good.
What temperature does tin melt at?
Good question. Yeah, the tin will melt at 470 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
So it's well within your cooking temperatures.
Like you
Right.
can, so you actually heat this pan up on a surface?
On a flame.
It's not going into a kiln or something.
Correct. It doesn't need to get kiln hot. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to get into the thousands. It's well within cooking temperature that this will that the tin will melt. Yeah. Let's see, we've got.
Ooh. Wow. That's beautiful.
This one's Russian.
Really?
Russian from probably 1880s through about 1910.
Wow.
This is an old du parquet, so this is an old version of the pans that I'm making today.
Oh, really? Wow. Beautiful.
And so, yeah, and then I mean, all of these are tin.
Oh, they're done.
These are tinned and waiting on a polish.
Okay. They just look so happy when they've been retinned.
Yeah, and they are in process of getting in line.
What's your sort of wait time?
We're on about 3 weeks.
You heat up the
So this is a piece that needs one more time around. I like to say that we want to, when cooking in these pans, we want to avoid high heat combined with dry task.
Okay.
So high and dry,
Yep.
you want to avoid. If we just put this pan dry onto a flame,
Yeah.
might take onto a high flame, it might take 5 minutes before it gets too hot. So if the phone rings or you get distracted, that on a high flame can melt in maybe that 5-minute time frame.
Okay.
That's probably what happened to this
this
guy.
one.
High heat, dry task.
Yep.
Now if this was full of water,
That wouldn't have happened.
no way that it could happen because the water will boil at 212.
Oh.
And so it'll keep the pan 212
Yeah.
until all the water's gone, and then it'll rise. So, little aside, avoid high and dry when cooking in tin lined.
So putting something,
Copper.
if you have a roasting pan, it's tin lined, and you have a roast and you put it into the oven, and it's cooking at 400 degrees, that's okay?
No problem.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I'll roast in a bigger fry pan like this.
Yeah.
I'll roast the chicken. No problem.
It's okay.
In a fry pan, iron handle, pat it dry, salt, pepper, right in the oven. I go 425
Okay.
on a roasted chicken.
Okay.
So can roast, definitely no problem.
Can you use metal utensils in these?
I'd avoid it.
Okay, that's very good to know. Because this is also a question that I've had, because I have
Sure.
copper pans at home.
Yep.
And I'm always wondering, I'm like, should I not be using metal? And I don't use metal in them.
Yep.
But I've always wanted to ask, and I was like, oh, I could ask Jim
Yep.
today.
Right, take that chicken example, right?
Yeah.
And I do this all the time. I've got my nice fry pan, the chicken's cooked, it's beautiful, I'm ready, got my fork and my knife, I'm ready to break it down and plate. And it's in my pan. The the steel knife is so much harder than the soft tin that we're gonna scratch, we're gonna cut that tin, no doubt. So using metal utensils, spatulas even, I'd avoid it, and definitely don't want to use fork, knife, breaking down a chicken. So I think to myself, I tell people this all the time.
Yes.
Avoid doing this. So I'll take the
Take it
chicken
out.
out and put it on a cutting board and break it
Okay.
down.
So wooden utensils, silicone utensils. So
Bamboo.
Okay.
Yep.
Historically, like 200 years ago, when they were cooking in these pans, did they generally not use metal in them? Did they know not to? Do we know? Do we even know?
I don't think we even know, but
Okay.
I would, I'd assume most utensils were probably wood.
Okay.
no doubt there were some metal utensils. I have stories of chefs, not 20th century chefs, cooking in copper, and they were meticulous about their sous chefs using these pans in a particular fashion. So I would say that the head chef in any kitchen, whose pans they probably are, is going to tell them no metal utensils.
Now I have my own answer to this question, which I will share, but I do want to ask you, because you're on the other side of this. If you have to be careful with it, and like with the tin, and you can't use metal utensils in it, and if you have to be concerned about it potentially melting. Why even use these pans?
Yep, it's a tool, right? That you've got a range of different capabilities of a tool cooking pan that you buy at Target, a cooking pan that you buy from me at the other end of the spectrum, and you've got a lot of different. You've got price certainly in there. You've got stickiness.
Yeah.
How sticky is it? How easy is it to use? How easy is it to clean? How does it respond to your cooking? Does it make you a better cook?
Yeah.
Do you have more control over what's going on in the pan? I'll liken it to a car.
Yeah.
You've got cars that are made for off-road. You've got cars that are made for racing on a track only, right? Not even taking it out onto the roads. And then you've got everywhere in between. So these cooking pans are more of a race car. They're finely tuned for exactly what you want to do. But if you get outside the bounds, that high and dry, if you get outside the bounds of standard cooking, if you want to sear a piece of tuna, if you want to sear a fillet, you need to choose your off-road pan. You want to choose a cast iron pan because that's what it's great at. It's great at high temperature types of things. So yes, it takes a little extra thought, but it gives you much more precise control over a sauce, over cooking scallops, cooking shrimp, things that you want to cook at the same rate in that pan, and then have it stop cooking. In a saucepan like this, I'll do a creme anglaise. It's a sauce that it's delicate. If you get it too hot, it's going to break, and you're going to have to start all over again. So that is a great task for a copper pan. You've got great control. If you realize that it's getting too hot, you can nudge down the temperature, and the temp's coming down, and you're not gonna mess up that sauce. So I think control is your main reason for using copper pans.
I have a small set of copper pans at home that I love. They're Mauviel.
Sure.
And I got them when I redid my kitchen, and I make my oatmeal in a small saucepan. And I've noticed the oatmeal is different, and the way it cooks is different.
Interesting.
In my copper pan, and I love that. I love cooking the oatmeal in my little copper pan. I would say that because people sort of say to me oh, I don't use cloth napkins because you have to iron them. And I don't wear linen shirts because you have to iron them, and so I can anticipate this rebuttal. Why even do it?
Sure. Another interesting thought along those lines is almost everybody has a memory of where they got these pans for some reason. So there's always a story.
Yeah.
I learned how to cook at Cordon Bleu in the 60s in Paris. I got these for my wedding gift. There's always a memory of the origin story of these things. And it brings back, in your everyday cooking, you reach for that pan and you got it from a friend, so-and-so, for your wedding, and it's memorable. It's history. It's part of your life. So there's that as well. It's not just a Target purchase.
No, not at all.
Nothing against Target.
But for me, it's actually just a lot more vain, because I think of this kettle sitting on my stove every day, and every single time I even just pass by the kitchen, and even if it's in the corner of my eye, I am seeing this thing, and every time I see it, inherently I am aware of how beautiful this is, even when it's not being used. And that to me is why.
That's great.
Like, to me, I think of all of the things that we use every day, and all of the things that we not only see, but we touch.
Sure.
And then I think of the things that we put on our walls, like paintings, where we think, let me beautify my life by putting a painting on the wall. Yeah. I feel like where you really can take life and elevate it in something where you didn't even imagine is by making the choice to use a copper kettle or to use a copper pan that was made 200 years ago and to bring it back to life, which is why I feel like I really wanted to come here to share you with them, because you are the conduit for enabling that to happen. And this kettle is so much more than something that just boils water. I've had this for 10 years, and I don't know if you know Yeats, like the poet Yeats, but there's a Yeats poem, The Stolen Child, where basically he's talking about the despair of the world, and these fairies take away this child because they say that because the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. And the last stanza of that poem is, "So away with us he's going, the solemn-eyed. He'll hear no more the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the kettle on the hob sings peace into his breast, or see the brown mice bob round and round the oatmeal chest. For he comes the human child to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, where the world's more full of weeping than he can understand." But I think when the kettle boils, I sometimes think, or the kettle on the hob sings peace into his breast. And I feel that line because seeing this kettle boil sings peace into my breast. And that would not be the same thing with pressing the button on the electric kettle.
There's a depth and a character and a humanity to the...
look at this thing.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, Yeats was talking about this kettle.
Right, exactly.
He was not talking about the plug-in electric kettle, which is why I feel like when I see these things often on the ground on a tarp at an antique market at Brimfield, and they're all rusty. They're not rusty, they're corroded, but they're just sitting there in my head, like that scene in the Titanic where she goes back and she's looking in the water and there's these little flashes. When I look at those things on the ground, I have glimpses of
little flashes, I
have flashes of. So when I walked in here this morning and I saw this, I just smiled.
That's great.
Because I really feel like when this is the wonderful thing about reviving the past. These things were made to outlive the makers. They were not made.
And the users, absolutely.
Exactly. They were not made so that, I'll make it and then it'll break and then they have to come back and buy another one. People really took pride in what they were doing and what they were making. And this is where, with these videos that I'm making, I really want to encourage people, buy one pan instead of 7.
And have it for the rest of your life
and
beyond.
And let that pan sing peace into your breast every time you use it.
We need to have the Yeats poem go out with everyone.
Exactly.
I love it.
But I feel like this is something that I've cultivated since I was a little kid. I was always interested in old things. And as I got older and I started to acquire things that I would use myself, I was so much more drawn to the very old, beautiful things that I could use every day.
And these aren't old, beautiful, expensive things either. Usually, to find a piece out there for $50 and to have it for the rest of your life is quite unique.
Jim,
that's great.
Thank you so much. Thank you for restoring and reviving my beautiful kettle, which I love so much. And I will also admit that, if you're going to shop for copper cookware and you want to save yourself the hassle of mailing things back and forth, Jim sells things, and his website is full of beautiful antique cookware that he has acquired and that he has retinned. So if you go to his website and you shop, you know that you're going to get something that you can just use right away. So I am here to buy a kettle as a Christmas present for my friend Laura, which I'm going to take back to Toronto.
Fantastic.
And I can't wait to look around. So we're going to end here, but I just want to thank you so much for allowing us to come in and for sharing what you do with us.
Absolutely, Rajiv. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.